All right, so we'll be looking at multiplication and then division of these same numbers. So for example, let's say we have minus 10 times 7. Okay, this same thing is giving us, I can interpret this as negative 10 times positive 7. Okay, there's something I would like you to know is what we call SNL, which is sign, number, letter. Okay, this is the order you follow when you're trying to multiply. You start with the sign first. So this negative times this positive, what do you have? Negative times positive is negative. Then you now go to number next, which is now 10 times 7, which is 70. Okay, we don't have any variable here or a letter, so we will not attend to that. So that is that. Okay, so let's say per adventure you now have minus 11 times minus 6. So you start with the sign first. Negative times negative, we have positive. You can write it if you wish. 11 times 6, which is 66. Okay, that way you've been able to solve that. All right, so that is it for that. Then we have division when we have something like plus 50 divided by minus 10. Okay, and this thing is still the same thing as 50 divided by minus 10, like this. So positive divided by negative is what? As I told you before, this will be negative. So you now go your number, 10 here, 1, 10 in 50 is 5. So the answer is negative 5. Okay? So that is how you go about that. All right? So let's look at this question so that we'll drive home the point. Minus 6 times minus 8. And that is equal to divided by, okay, that is divided by minus 6 times 2. Okay, times plus 2. Now you can represent this as minus 6 times minus 8 divided by minus 6 times plus 2. Now that will give you negative times negative is positive. So positive 6 times 8, you have 48. Then negative times positive down here is negative. 6 times 2 is 12. At the end of the day, in the positive divided by negative is negative. 12 here, 1. 12 in 48 is 4. So you have negative 4. And that is the answer. Okay? So that is that for that. Now, we'll come to the concept of multiplicative inverse. Okay? Now, let's say sometimes we hear something like this. Okay, multiplicative inverse. Let's say the multiplicative inverse, or sometimes we hear that you find the reciprocal. Reciprocal of 2, for example. Now, reciprocal simply means 1 over that number. So if you say 1 over reciprocal of 2 or inverse of 2, reciprocal and inverse means the same thing. It means 1 over that number, 1 over 2. So the reciprocal of 2 is 1 over 2. Now you are asked find the reciprocal of 2 over 3. That would be 1 divided by 2 over 3. Now you've been taught in primary school, this can be written like this: 1 divided by 2 over 3. If you're more comfortable like this, you do it like this. But you've been told in primary school that whenever the denominator is a fraction, you have to convert this division sign to multiplication. And we do that by taking this one, this denominator, this 3 going up, then this 2 coming down. Or this is what I mean, like this. Okay, so this becomes, your sign will change to multiplication. You now have 3 over 2. So the multiplicative inverse of the inverse of 2 over 3 is 3 over 2. Now, why do we need this? There are situations where you would be solving and you need to cancel out something. So you always need the multiplicative inverse. So, and one thing you should note is that anytime the multiplicative inverse multiplies that same number, it becomes, it will give you 1 always. Anytime you multiply the multiplicative inverse by that value. So for example, the multiplicative inverse and 2 times the multiplicative inverse of 2, which is 1 over 2, will always give you 1. And that is what we refer to as unity or identity. So you see, it will cancel out. The same thing happens here when you have 2 over 3 times its multiplicative inverse, which is 3 over 2. This 3 will cancel this 3. This 2 will cancel this 2. So you have 1. Okay? So that is it for the multiplicative inverse. So it's just typically what will you multiply that will give you the they just give you unity whenever that number is being multiplied by its multiplicative inverse. Okay, so you have that. Now there's another one. Let's say they tell you find, a question might come, they will ask you find the multiplicative inverse of 50. No, inverse of minus 500 divided by minus 10. Now, the first thing you have to do is to solve the question normally. Then you now find the multiplicative inverse of your result. Because specifically here, they told you to find the multiplicative inverse of this calculation here. So what you will typically do is just to solve it normal. You say minus 500 divided by minus 10. Okay, so you can just cancel 10 here. 1 in 5 is 50. Negative divide negative is positive, so you have 5 and 50. So the multiplicative inverse of 50 now is 50. The multiplicative inverse is, sometimes you see it is written like this, 50 raised to the power of minus 1. So it's going to be 1 divided by that number, which is 50. So the multiplicative inverse of, you can say the multiplicative inverse of 50 is 1 over 50. Or sometimes you can decide to solve this question like this. Since you have minus 500 divided by minus 10, you can find the multiplicative inverse. Just invert this. And inverting this simply means 1 over this. So this is 1 over minus, since negative will cancel negative, you don't leave it 500. So you have positive like this. Since now the denominator is what? Is a fraction, right? This 10 will go up, 500 will come down. So you now have 10 over 500. At the end of the day, this will cancel and you now still have 1 over 50. So it's up to you to decide what you want to to do. Okay. Then we have another one called the additive inverse. Now, usually in the inverse, all you're looking for is the multiplication is to find a value that you can use to multiply to have either negative, make the value to be 1. But in additive now is to find a way to make the value to be 0. For example, if I have 2 now, the additive inverse of 2, 2 is positive. Its additive inverse is what? The opposite of what we have. So the opposite of this. What is the opposite of positive? What do you have as the opposite of positive? Hello?
Opposite of positive.
Yes.
Negative.
So negative. So you write -2. So this is the -2 is the additive inverse of +2. Why? Because if you add 2 of them together, you have 2 minus 2. It will give you what? 0. Okay? And if I have -3 and they say I should find the additive inverse of -3, I'll look for the opposite of -3. What is the opposite of -3?
The opposite of -2. +3.
+3. So the additive inverse of -3 is +3. So it's a number such that if you add it to that particular number, you will have 0. So that is 3 plus 3 is 0. Okay? So that is just the idea. Now, why is this necessary? Sometimes you can have equations like this. +3 is equal to 5. Now, because you need to take this 3 out, that's why you can now say you find this +3, right? And the additive inverse of +3 is what? The additive inverse of +3, what do you have? Is -3. So what you do is you now come here and say x, you now say add, this is in algebra, you now say adding -3 to both sides. Or sometimes you see some people write subtracting 3 to both from both sides. You now have this, since we are adding, this will be -3 in bracket. You now have 5 plus -3. Okay, you always separate them in the bracket. So this will be x plus 3. Negative times positive is negative. And then you have 5. Negative times positive is negative. You have this. So at the end of the day, you have +3 minus 3 is 0. So you're left with x plus 0 is equal to 2. Then x now is equal to 2. So that way, you can be able to use this to solve algebra. And that is where the additive inverse comes to play. Okay? So, does that make sense? All right. So, okay. I think, let me. Okay, so we're looking at we'll be looking at algebraic expressions and particularly under the directed algebraic terms. All right, so typically we've been doing this thing just for numbers, but let's see how we can do this. Now, 5a is something you should note. That 5a simply means 5 multiplying a. And a is known as a variable, okay, or an unknown, okay? So we call it a variable. We don't know what it is. Okay, so it's assumed that it's a number. So when you calculate, most times you can get a to be 2. So 5 times 2, and that will give you 10. So it's assumed to be a number. So, and for example, you can have minus m. What minus m means is that there's a coefficient of 1 here. Okay, because 1 multiply anything is still 1. If 1 multiply 2, it's still that number, right? So there's a 1 here multiplying this. So if I ask you now, what does this thing mean? This simply means minus 1 times m, okay? Which will still give you minus m. So most times we don't write the 1 there, minus 1m. It looks somehow, but you can still write it if you want, okay? Now, let's look at this question. It said you should solve minus 5 times 2y. Now, you remember what I said about SNL? So you have to obey the SNL. We have to follow it critically, sign, letter, the number. So negative, here is positive 2y. So negative times positive here is negative. You now go to number next. 5 times 2 is 10. Then we don't have any letter here to multiply. So we now multiply by y to it. Okay? So this is your answer. Now, let's say you have minus 2y times 8y, negative 8y. This is equal to, you start with the sign, negative times negative, positive. Number next, number 2 times 8 is 16. Now letter, y times y is equal to y squared, right? Because y cubed is the same thing as y multiplying y in 3 places. Okay, so you have that y times y is y squared. So you just typically y times y, you just write one of the y, count how many they are, 1, 2, just write it on top, and that is it, y squared. Okay, so this is the answer for that. Now there are times when the question gets a bit interesting and looks harder, but application of what we already know based on the signs will really help us. For example, you have minus 18a divided by minus 6. This is 18a divided by minus 6. Here is positive, you know. You start with the sign first. Negative, positive divided by negative is negative. Then you go to number 6 here, 1. Okay, 6 cannot enter 18. Yes, so we can try 3. We can try 3 here. Okay, 3 in this is 2. 3 in 18 is 6, right? Yeah, so you have that. Okay. Yeah, 6 can go directly. 6 in what's it called? 6 in 18 is 3 times. So there's no need for all those jamboree. So it's 3 times. So you can have, there is no a to divide anything. So it will be 3 times a. So we have negative 3a as your answer. All right. So let's look at another one. Minus 33x squared divided by minus 3x. So if I do that, it becomes a bit easy now. This thing is typically written like this. You can still write it like this. Let me write it like this. Minus 3. Remember I told you x squared means x times x over minus 3 times x. Okay. Now, we start with sign, SNL, sign first. Negative divided negative is positive. We go to number. Number 3 here, 1. 3 in 33 is 11. So I have 11. Now we'll go to letter. This x will cancel this x. So you're left with 1x. So the answer is 11x. Now, one of the things you should notice, when you're canceling, for example, you have x cubed over x squared. All I will advise you to do, this in indices, just subtract, since this one is the bigger one, you take out of these 3, if you subtract 2, what will you have left? Okay, so if I subtract 2 here, I will have only 1 left. X raised to the power of 1 is x1. Now, there are situations where you have something like this, x divided by x cubed. Okay, since this one that is smaller here, this the up one is smaller, this is the bigger one, so you subtract this one from the bigger one. You now have 1 over x. Yeah, how is that possible? Just look at this, x squared divided by x cubed, just to show you. X times x, right? That's what it means. You now have x times x times x. This x will cancel this x. This x will cancel this x. We are left with 1x. So that will be 1 over. So you see that. So that makes it very, very easy. So the next thing is, they tell you to simplify minus 1 over 3 of 36x squared. All right, so this is very simple. What you can do is, anytime you see off in mathematics, it means multiplication. So this means minus 1 over 3 times 36 s squared. Now, I've told you about SNL. So sign before number, you know this is positive, so you put your negative, because negative times positive is negative. Number next, 3 here, 1. 3 in this is 12. So you have 12. There is no letter to divide or multiply, so you have 12x squared, negative 12x squared. And that is it. Some people can decide to rearrange this equation and say minus 1 over 3 times 36 s squared. Okay, this thing can be written as minus 36 over 3 s squared. And so you can decide to scatter it and say all the number one side times x squared. It is allowed. You can do that. Okay, it's still the same thing. Then you have 12 times x squared. And that will give you what? Negative 12x squared. Okay? Does that make sense? So I believe you should have your textbooks to go through some of the exercises that we've highlighted here, and that will go a very, very long way to help you understand it better. Okay. All right. So I'm checking of another topic. I've done this negative. I've done directed numbers. So let me let me quickly do linear equations since we're already in algebra. Now there's something called substitution. Now in substitution, it's just like just in football, you take one person, there are 11 players, and maybe a player gets injured and you want to take him out of the pitch. You kind of find a way to change him. Okay, you can only change, you can replace. So you can say number 7 come out, should come out, number 9 should go in, right? So that kind of thing. Somebody wearing jersey number 7 should come out, somebody wearing jersey number 9 should enter. That is substitution. You're replacing it with something. So for example, find the value of the following. Okay. Now, when that A is equal to 1, B is given as 2, and C is equal to 3. So what's there? Let me write the questions they tell us to solve. That is 5a, 7a minus 2b. And number 3 should be ab minus 5b. Okay, so what am I to do? Very easy. This is what you can do. The first thing you have to do now is to understand that in substitution, let's start with 5a. Since you're given that a is 1, that means anywhere you see a, it's 1, you replace it with 1. Anywhere you see b, you replace it with 2. Anywhere you see c, you replace it with 3. And remember that this thing is 5. Remember that this equation is equal to 5 times a. So this means that a is what? 1. So 5 times 1 is 5. Or some people will do it like this, which is much more better. You can put it 5 into 1, which is 5 times 1, which is still 5. Okay, number 2, 7a minus 2b. Very exciting. You can just say 7 times 1 because that is what a is. And then 2, b is giving us 2. So you now have 7 times 1 is 7 minus 2 times 2 is 4. Then 7 minus 4, what do you have? 3. Okay, that makes sense, I believe. Then AB. So just follow the step. You see A, what is A? A stands for 1. What is B? It stands for 2, right? And they are multiplying each other. AB is the same thing as A times B, please. Always remember. So that is why we put it like this. Then 5B is 5 times B. So 5 times 2. We now have 1 times 2 is 2 minus 5 times 2 is 10. Now, 2 is a smaller number subtracting 10. So anytime a smaller number is subtracting a bigger number, we have a negative value. So we'll now reverse it. 10 minus 2, we now have 8. So our answer is 8. Okay? All right. So we can quickly do one, and depending the kind of equation, let me just add some. Let's say you have the square root of, they tell you to find this, the square root of a4 times plus 3, sorry, that is c squared. Okay. Now, this thing does not matter. It's very simple. Just put your square, as we said. Replace the values. This is 1 raised to the power of 4 plus 3 raised to the power of 2. Now, remember that 1 raised to the power of 4 is equal to what? 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is 4 places, which gives you 1. Okay, sorry, I wanted to give a better example. Let me use B. Let's use B plus C. This is 2 raised to the power of 4. So that will give us a very palatable answer. But you get the idea. So that we can get an answer that we can solve it. So 2 raised to the power of 4 would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. All right, so you go 2 times 2 is 4 times another 2. Without 4 times 2, you have 8. 8 times 2 is 16. So I will be having that this is equal to the square root of 16 plus 3 square is 3 times 3, which is what? 9. So we have plus 9. Okay. So 16 plus 9 is 25, right? So the square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 will give you what? 25. So that's how we get the square root. Okay, so the square is typically, this is a perfect square. Perfect square is a number that can multiply itself 2 times. Okay, and whenever the square root of that number is taken, you get back that same number. Just in this case, 5 times 5 give you 25. Then if you take the square root of 25, we get back 5. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so sometimes you might, let's say, let me just give you this equation. Let's say we have P to be minus 5 and Q is given as 10. Then they gave an equation to say that you should find P minus Q over P. Okay, so what I can do is I will say solution. Then I will go and say P minus Q divided by P. Now you replace everything you have. So this will be P is minus 5. So I have minus 5 minus Q is 10. 10 over minus 5. Now, minus 5 minus 10, I've told you, minus 5 minus 10. Since the sign is the same, put the sign, then you add everything. So, minus 5 plus 10 is 15, minus 15 over minus 5. Negative divide negative is positive. 5 here, 1, 5 here, 3. So, you have positive 3. And that gives you your answer. Does that make sense? I believe so. Okay, now let's go to another interesting concept called removing brackets. Okay, removing brackets is very it's very interesting. So let me, if you're dealing with removing bracket, this is what you can do. Let's say, for example, you are given that a into x plus y. Okay, now what this thing means that a is multiplying everything inside this bracket. So that means that a will multiply x, and at the same time a will multiply y. So you go like this: a times x. This is how you read it. You have ax. You now put your sign plus a times y. You have a. Are you seeing it? Then if you now have ax minus,
Yeah.
I will go that a will multiply x. So a times x, you have ax, then your sign negative. A will multiply minus y, and y you now have a y. Okay, now let's try it with an example. Let's say 8 2c plus 3d. Now this is removing bracket because there's something we call BODMAS. I believe you know what BODMAS is. So it's a bracket of division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. So typically this gives us a precedence of how we can do our calculations, the order to follow. So we have to get the bracket off. Now to expand, because there's nothing that can add here, 2c is different from 3d. So we can't add it. The letters are different. Had it been there were c, c, or dd, then we can just add the numbers. So here 8 is going to multiply 2, right? So 8 times 2, you have 16c plus this 8 again goes to multiply 3d. 8 times 3 is what? 18.
8 times
8 times 3. Sorry, that is 20. 24. Sorry.
24.
So 24. So you have 24d. And that is all. That is the answer. There is nothing to be added again. Okay? So let's try another one. Let's say we have 4y into 3x minus 5. Now, you see here that we have both letter and what? A variable, right? So we'll go 4y times 3x. So you can do it like this: 4 times 3. Okay, let me do it like this: 4 times 3, then y times x. Okay? Minus into bracket 4 times 5 times what? Y. Are you seeing it? So 12yx. Okay? Then minus 20y. Though in math, we like to arrange this. X in alphabet, X comes before Y, right? So we say xy minus what? 20y. Okay? So you have that. Now, you can have that this type of question might look tricky, but it's very simple. It's still the same thing. 3a. Now, the 3a is multiplying outside, not, this one used to be at the front here, but here's at the back. It does not matter whether you place it here. It's just like saying 2 times 2, 2 times 3, and 3 times 2. All of them are 6, right? So it does not matter. This 3a will still multiply this. It will still multiply 7. So it's almost like it being here. You can decide to rearrange it and say, no, I want 3a into 7a minus 2b. That is the beauty of multiplication because it's cumulative. You can rearrange the values being multiplied. Okay? So we can go like this and say 3a times 7a, which is 7 times 3 times a times a, right? Minus 3 times 2 times b times a, right? And there you have 7 times 3. What do you have?
7 times 3, 21.
21. A times a.
8 times 8,
A times
64.
a.
Eh?
A times A. Letter A times letter A.
Is A.
Is A square. So in indices, that is what they call A power 1. Now they said if the base is the same, because this is the base, the letters are the same or the numbers are the same. You write the base, then you add their power. So this is 1 plus 1, which is what? A square. Okay? If I have 2 times 2 times 2, this simply means since they are the same, I'll just write 1, 2, then count how many? 1, 2, 3. Then write the number of times they repeated 3 times. Does that make sense? Then, so next thing is 3 times 2. What do you have?
3 times 2,
Yes,
6.
6. B times A is what?
B times
A
B times A is B.
is BA, but you can arrange it and say BA. Is now 20
Okay.
square minus 6AB. Okay? So you
Okay.
have that. Now there is a unique one which is very, very critical. Okay, let me just touch this. 5z into x minus 9y. Now you see here we have negative. We have to be very careful. This is where SNL comes to play. Sign, number, letter. We start with the sign because negative 5z will multiply everything here, right? So we have that negative 5z times x minus into bracket. This minus is for this here. Now into bracket negative. This minus here is here now. So this will be negative 5z times 9y. Now when you do that, you have 5z is negative 5. Z times x is x and xz, right? Or zx, anyone you want to call. Then negative. This is still negative 5 times 9. What do you have?
5 times 9. 45.
We have this. Now, this is negative 5xy, xz. This negative now, multiply this negative here. What do you now have?
Huh?
Negative times negative, what do you have?
Is plus
Oh, positive. That will give you 45yz. And that is simply the answer. So some people might decide not to go this route. They might just go like this and just go directly to it. This negative, yes, positive. They put negative. 5 times this z times x is xz. Then now they go negative times positive. You have what? And negative times negative is positive. 5 times 9 is 45. Z times y is yz. And that is all in one line. So it's up to you to know the method that works best for you. Okay. Now quickly, number 6. I have sometimes your equation might look like this: 6a plus 3b plus 5 into 2a minus b. Now this is expansion, and you have different expansion. Now it's like they combine two expansion. This is another expansion, this is another expansion, right? So what can we do? We'll take the expansion individually. So this 3 times 6a, what do you have? 3 times 6, what do you have?
3 times 6. 18.
18, then the a is there, 18a plus 3 times 3b, what do you have?
3 times what?
3 times 3b.
3 times 3b equals to 9b.
9b plus this 5 multiplying 2a, what do you have? 5 times 2a, you have 10a. Then 5 times minus b, you have minus 5b. Now there's something we call in maths called collecting like terms. You have to take all the numbers that are similar. Like here, you can see a is common. See another a here. So it's more like saying all the a's are naira, all the b's are dollars, right? If I ask you the total amount of money you have, you cannot just tell me you add everything. Then say, this is 50. Let's say you have $2 and 10 naira. You cannot come and tell me that I have 12 naira dollar or something like that. It won't work. So the only thing you tell me is I have $12 and I have 10 naira. So all we do in collecting like terms, you say collecting like terms is simply you bringing all the dollars together to add, bringing all the nairas one side to add. So you go like this: 18a, find another a, this is it. But note that the sign is together with the number. So this is plus 10a. Then you have plus 9b. Is there any other b? Yes, it's negative 5b. Don't forget this sign. The sign is for the number. So you have this 18a plus 10a. You have 28a. Now plus 9 minus 5b. So 9 minus 5, you have is positive. You have 4b. And that is your answer. Okay, so you have that. That is how to solve questions like this. Okay. You can try this one out on your own. 3x minus y minus 3 into 2x minus 3y. That would be a bit reasonable. So you expand quickly, you have 6x minus 2y minus, and you have to be careful, minus 3 times this is 6x, minus times minus, you have positive. 3 times 3 is 9, 9y. You collect like terms, and you have 6x minus 6x minus 2y plus 9y. So 6 minus 6 is 0.